appreciate that, Tom. To get everybody warmed up, we're talking about sales tax first thing in the morning. So I'll say this, that if there's two groups of people that I know for certain really like numbers, one's accountants, another's venture capitalists, and want to share with you some numbers and a little bit of a story of how just over a year ago, I was working in Silicon Valley as a venture capitalist, and a year on, I'm now working with a sales tax automation company that is doing some really neat and innovative things, but is also obsessed with the power of Orange. So $112 billion. This is the estimated total budget shortfall of all the states across the United States. Of that, by some estimates, not Avalara's, $23.8 billion of that is from uncollected sales tax. That's an enormous number. This has a huge impact on two groups. First is the state. State of Maryland, 24 cents of every dollar of revenue the state of Maryland generates comes from sales tax. Some states, just mentioned I just moved to Seattle, Washington. In Washington, 61% of all the state's revenue comes from sales tax. So the other place that it really matters is to cities and local municipalities. In many states, the local municipalities are really dependent upon this revenue. Just moved from Silicon Valley, city of Menlo Park. Over the last decade, Menlo Park's population stayed fairly constant, around 30,000 people. But during that time period, while the overall revenue has grown for the city, the revenue they generate, since just right around the dot-com boom, has been cut by over 50%. Where did this all start? July 1st, 1921, the state of West Virginia was the very first state to enact local sales tax legislation. Well, the politicians were a lot smarter than I typically am willing to give them credit, because they realized when they were passing legislation that said, for every transaction, B2B, B2C, if dollars changed hands, then there was going to be a tax due on that. They realized there was no way that they could actually go collect this money and keep track of it directly for consumers. So as part of your obligations of being registered to do business in the great state of West Virginia, you as a business had to, for the state, go out and collect sales tax. Non-revenue generating, but it's something you had to do if you wanted to do business in the state. So let's fast forward to today. Where are we at now? So this is a picture of my mother. She's wearing some really cool sunglasses that, even though she doesn't look like she loves them in this picture, she does. My brother got her these for Christmas, just this past Christmas, and she absolutely loves them. So being a competitive, little sibling rivalry, I went out and went online and tried to buy her just an awesome birthday gift. Her birthday's in January. And as I was going through the checkout process, this screen came up. And I'm shipping something to an address that I lived at all through high school, through most of my childhood. My parents still live there in Round Rock, Texas. And I'm confronted with this question of please select which of the options best describes your shipping address. I've got 5 bullets. I have no idea which of these is the right answer. I have absolutely no idea. The only reason this has been injected into the checkout process here is because this company is trying to be compliant with sales tax. And they're not really doing a very good job, because I still don't know the right answer. So what's the alternative? If you don't want to ruin the customer experience, then you face audit. The Aberdeen Group estimates that the annual cost in any year that a small company is facing an audit is almost $50,000. Okay, if I'm a small company CFO and I'm thinking about cash management, right? I'm thinking about how I'm going to make payroll. $50,000 is an enormous number. This includes the labor cost, audits, penalties, audit defense. That's an enormous figure. So I mentioned I was in venture capital before. We spent a lot of time studying trends, so review some of the big trends here. The states are broke. They're hiring more auditors. Sales tax complexity is only increasing. We now have over 11,000 unique tax jurisdictions in the United States, hundreds of thousands of rule combinations when you take into account product taxability, tax holidays. So the transactional tax trend is only going in one direction. It's getting worse. It's getting harder. So I did what any good capitalist does, and I moved into this 500 square foot apartment in Seattle. This is the day I moved in. This is all my luggage I brought with me first day, joining Avalara up in Seattle. And I joined this company specifically because they're doing a lot of really neat things. Instead of trying to come up with software that's going to outsmart an accountant, that's not necessary. They came up with a solution to automate really smart decisions that accountants are making, right? We know the proper tax policy and rules that should be applied, but how do we do that in a fast and efficient way? So to revisit the same address that we were just looking at before, Avalara has gone out and drawn out on a map the latitude, longitude polygons of all 11,000 plus tax jurisdictions in the United States. So if you use our software and you go and look up my parents' address, it knows exactly the sales tax amount because we convert that into a latitude, longitude cross-section, drop a pin on a map, instead of making you guess the right color of the tax jurisdiction that applies for you. And we know the breakout of all the applicable local jurisdiction tax that's due. So the city of Round Rock gets paid, the state of Texas gets paid, and we've done something really neat with that now because we've done this work, we can make it mobile. And our partners are using this in really innovative ways. The absolute smallest merchants operating in the state of Maryland or anywhere in the US can now use products like Intuit's GoPayment, mobile point of sale solution. And with the flick of a switch, turn on location-based sales tax rate. And so anytime that application starts up, anytime you open up your point of sale, you know exactly what the sales tax rate is based on where you're operating. So that's useful for food trucks like this in complicated states. This is one of my favorite barbecue joints in downtown Seattle. In Seattle, the sales tax rate is pretty complicated. These guys do great barbecue if you're ever out, right around 2nd and Pike. Also in places where you absolutely have no address information, the middle of a field somewhere, a new construction site, Avalara is the easiest way to solve these types of tax problems. As we mentioned earlier, the economy is changing very rapidly, right? People are finding out that even the flaming sword of whatever in these games online is now a taxable event. And it doesn't matter if you're paying for add-ons for game modules in US dollars, Rubicon, gold coins, or 10,000 gems. Many of these events are now taxable. And Avalara is coming up with solutions to make smart tax decisions easy to implement. So we've actually assembled a resource center to give you guys the facts that you need to stay ahead of the politicians, stay ahead of the changing economy, stay ahead of your clients' needs, and then also make sure you get the numbers right. So hopefully you guys find this useful, and hopefully you guys have an opportunity to talk to your clients about sales tax, because I know it's coming up in multiple conversations, particularly for your clients that are operating in multiple states. Thanks for the time.